Ooh, guys, we've got a lot to unpack. Fans' opinions, I'm sure you've been going through a lot of those. Journalist opinions, I'm also sure you've been going through a lot of those. Some kind of other fans' opinions, which I'm not sure we ever really need, but we're going to hear them. And then some performative fans' opinions. I really want to talk about those. And then I also want to talk about a very interesting and weird Brentford performance by Liverpool. So let's get down to it. Welcome back to Laurence McKenna on LFC channel. If you've not already hit subscribe, hit it. And of course, there's a free Discord down there. We can go chat about all these issues that are happening. Let's talk a little bit about why we think Liverpool have gotten to this situation in the first place. We need to go all the way to last season for where I think the genesis of some of these issues came from and what we were kind of flagging for a little while. Arne Slot is a great manager. He has set up clearly in last season a really intricate but adapted, arguably we call it adapted because he and Klopp play very similar football, but an adapted version of 4-3-3. But even that doesn't feel really fair on him because I think he did play very different football to what Jurgen Klopp played. And despite the pressing in those moments, it's what we did with it when we won it back and what we did in order to win it back that was kind of the key for us last year. And I want to talk about what we did with it when we won it back, because a big part of that was the creativity in the team and where the real surges of creativity came from. The first one, which I want to flag, is Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think losing Trent Alexander-Arnold from any side is obviously a bit of a blow, but I think in particular losing Trent Alexander-Arnold from a side where he's a pretty big character, and you could see that towards the end of last season. He was fading out of the team. He was, there were kind of these bit part moments where he would be the old Trent and then he'd become this kind of absent player out in the field, and it was really frustrating to watch. But creatively, yeah, there was quite a big outlet there on those long balls. And you could kind of see that sometimes early on this season when we put Szoboszlai in this position. He would pick out some of those long balls. And suddenly it was well, it doesn't seem all that hard. But Bradley and Frimpong really aren't that kind of profile. They are ball carrying, play off another front guy, pass it around, and let's work our way into the box type players. They win the ball back as high up the field as they can, ideally, and then we are suddenly back on the front foot. It's very different to the way we could play with Trent. We could almost play slightly deeper with Trent because we had that quarterback type position. And we've really not replaced that because we didn't want to replace that. We wanted to change what we did out wide. And that will have been under the instruction of Richard Hughes and Arne Slot. And obviously we brought in Frimpong, and I think Frimpong is a very specific kind of profile that we want to bring in. And I still kind of back him. I've not really seen enough of him to know what it is that he's doing at Liverpool. Some people are already saying they're out on Frimpong, which I feel is a little bit unfair. But on Kerkez on the other side, I definitely think that Kerkez has what I would call these kind of psychological weaknesses at this point that he's not quite addressed. And you can see it's more to do with the level of pressure that I think he's playing under, not only from the fans, not only from the team, but also alongside Virgil van Dijk. And he's still not quite found that positioning. We had a problem last year at left back, and it did expose us quite a bit with Andy Robertson. It was a fitness thing, but we also had Tsimikas to cover in there. And Tsimikas, I thought, was quite an able understudy to Andy Robertson last year. But it kind of gave the back line at least a little bit more solidity, not because it was a better defensive position, but because we had people who knew what they needed to do. And I feel that at the moment, yeah, we know what Bradley needs to do, and we know what Frimpong and Kerkez and Andy Robertson need to do in the old system. But in this new system, I think that the fullbacks are much more progressed. I think that the fullbacks are meant to win the ball much higher up the field. I think they are meant to be much more aggressive, which is what Kerkez and Frimpong are really good at doing. And at the moment, because we don't have the personnel behind them, I think we would have moved on Konate in the summer had we got Mark Gay or had we got someone else. And I also think that if we have Gravenberch in the side, there's slightly more solidity, but we can talk about that in a second. I also think we would have tried to play a back three if we had not have moved on Konate and we brought in Mark Gay. And that would have been quite interesting to see because, first of all, it would have been a very big shift in system, but it would have been about having a ball-carrying defender and some ball-playing defenders alongside him. You don't need three ball-carrying defenders, you just need one. One of them can bring it out, and we can swap sides. Konate can be on one side, Gay can be on the other, and depending on the game state and the game situation, we change that. And Liverpool would have been relatively good at reading that, I think. I think there would have been times where we'd struggled because any change in system is going to be a struggle, but I think we would have done better with that. And I think it would have been a good basis for this entire side to build from. And I've said this quite a few times. I think defensive instability leads to a lack of solidity in the rest of the side. And it's clear to me that that is a really big issue for Liverpool right now. And some people are going to go, well, you sold Trent, whatever. We didn't get rid of Trent. We sold him for 10 million, but we didn't get rid of Trent. Trent forced his way out of the club, partially probably because we didn't offer him the money he wanted, but also partially because he probably wanted a slightly different journey at Real Madrid. And, I don't begrudge that. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world now. I think there is, at the time it felt very difficult, but fair enough. But we're responsible for that left-back position. We're responsible for who are our centre-backs. We're responsible for going in late for Mark Gay, even though that was always going to be the tactic, even though it was being pushed through by both clubs. Glasner was the sticking point there, and maybe we just didn't anticipate that. And maybe that's because we thought players very often get what they want. Mark Gay should get what he wants if he wants to leave the club. Players should have their own freedom to come and go as they please. But now he's exploring other options, blah, blah, blah. That's a whole other video. That leads to a massive amount of I would say upheaval for Liverpool, because we didn't want to play the same system. We didn't want to play a system which complements Salah more than it complements Isak. We didn't want to play a system that complements Salah more than it complements Ekitike. We didn't want to have to play a system where we are essentially carrying elements of baggage in our team, not because those players are bad, but because these players are not suited to this system. And of course, there is an element where you look at Slot and you say, well, I'm sure there are other managers that could get a tune out of this. By the way, the people who are saying sack Slot, calm the hell down. Whatever the hell is wrong with you. This is a transitional season. This is a transitional side. Doesn't matter about the run of games, whatever. We are going through a difficult psychological moment as a side. We do not need someone saying, oh, I don't know if Slot, I don't need Slot skeptics, is what I would say. And I get it. There are probably some people who say, well, I think there are other, bring in Iraola, bring it, yeah, maybe there are other profiles that you would think suit this. But Slot is currently, and will probably be for quite a while, our manager. And so talking about other profiles, talking about what people are doing with other teams where there isn't as much pressure, teams where there isn't as much ire, teams where there isn't as much coverage, teams where there isn't as much low blocking against them, it's well and good saying that. And Slot came from a place where there was already pressure, but there wasn't nearly as much as Liverpool. He spoke about that. We've seen it with Manchester United and multiple managers. We've seen it with Chelsea and multiple managers. We've seen it with so many different profiles of very big clubs where they bring someone in and they can't handle it. And I think Slot is very capable of handling this. I think he's very capable of handling high-profile players. He played Salah this weekend after Salah had allegedly, and I'm still not quite sure about this, deleted a bunch of references to Liverpool off his social media. Interestingly. By the way, we're paying Salah £300,000 a week to be not only a player, but to be a leader at the club, to be someone that when we look at him, we go, that guy is leading this team. And I think this is twofold, because deleting, I don't really understand that. I don't understand I would call that quite petulant or childish nature of that. I get the ego side of it, but I think once you hit one side of 30, do you know what I'm saying? Like, we've all had those embarrassing moments, but this is somewhere where we've all had embarrassing moments in public. So, I can kind of forgive it. But what I'm saying is, you got people around you who are there to help you with your career. A lot of people have embarrassing moments on their own, or a lot of people kind of get publicly exposed, or whatever you want to call it. But that's not the same as having a whole team of people that manage your social media, give you advice, craft your everyday image and everything. So I'm very surprised really that Salah went down that route, because frankly, I would have expected more support around him. That leads me onto the other side of things, where it is about losing Jota in this side, and it is about the frustration that we will feel in this time, the sadness and the grieving process, and how that opens up so many other feelings for you as a human, but particularly as a man. I think men, in particular when we're grieving, there are so many different processes we can go through. And I know from my own grieving process, when I've lost people close to me, I've never really lost a friend in such a tragic circumstance. I never want to, But I remember losing family members. And I remember at the time, it makes you think of where your own life is at, where your own mortality is at, where your own happiness is, and where your feelings are coming from. And it makes you think about it, but you're also slightly confused at the time, and you're trying to process everything. Your brain is moving so quick just to try to put the world back into place and kind of reflect reality for you now without that person who would have felt very important. And without judgment, because I think free association of what you think players are going through is one thing or the other. I would forgive that if that was going on for some of those players, for guys who had bonded with these people, and vice versa. So with all of that, I say that trying to understand these players and where they come from, and that's coming from a position where I'm not a professional athlete. I'm not, the closest in my experience is probably being in a fairly low-level position, public eye position, but that giving me some insight through seeing other people's very high-profile public eye positions and the pressure that they felt and the pressures that I saw and the pressures that I would try to support those people through. Multiple people, not just the one you're thinking of. So with that, I think that is really important to acknowledge. That alongside the fact that I also think this Liverpool team are trying to move forward from playing Mo Salah. And I laid this out on Sky Sports yesterday on Saturday. I got really absolutely ripped apart by it in the comments, But I think this team's moving on from Salah. And I overall think that this team is struggling to move on from Mo Salah because we still have to play Mo Salah. We still have to find a position for him. And I will reference this again. When he played in striker, he scored against Bournemouth, who he played? Brentford. And that frustrated me a little bit because I was like, okay, that took a lot of the pressure off him on bringing the ball into the box where there aren't that many targets for him or a low block or whatever. I think Salah struggles against a low block sometimes when he can't dribble through them. And he is a player who gets in his head. He is a player who kind of has those moments where we don't, we know he's kind of in his own brain, his own mind, and he's kind of trying to break out and he's trying to do something powerful and imposing. He doesn't really get it, doesn't do it. And that's frustrating for us as fans, right? But at the same time, again, I understand it and we're supporters and come from Liverpool. So there's all that to contend with. I also think we have to contend with the Isak side of things. Isak's going to get injured. And I'm still confused as to why we bought an injury prone or kind of a player who, hasn't quite been through his pre-season. Or hasn't been through a normal pre-season, should we say. Which might be excuse making, if you're strong enough, then you're strong enough. And, if you're big enough, you're big enough. And if you use that as your fuel, then it's your fuel, But I'm cognizant of that. But then I'm also cognizant of the fact that we played, I thought midfield was probably a more positive element to the game last night. And I was frustrated by the way that they play over the midfield, but that's not the midfield's fault. Like, if they're pressing and they win it back, then the system works. But clearly there are faults to this system because Kanate looked like he was running through glue when he was coming back. And he looked almost caught out by the fact that Sade got the other side of him, which shouldn't have been the case. He also, by the way, looked like he gave up on catching up the shot at one point. It was just sort of like, well, the goalkeeper might save it. Go shoulder to shoulder, make it as difficult as possible for these guys. He gave up catching up to him, and I didn't understand that. And for me, I think that's unforgivable. Not forever, just unforgivable in that moment. That's not something I look back on and think, oh, that's the effort that I think is there for Liverpool. The same as I think when Kirkes lost his man and we conceded our first goal from the throw-in, that's all Kirkes. The head on, sure, that's Ekitike's guy. But he just got above him. He was in front of him. That's the striker's guy. This is Kirkes, our left back, at the back post. That's kind of your bread and butter there as a left back. Do you know what I mean? And then for their third goal, I think they were, they are, I still don't, I look at it and I think if that's a penalty, then the Gakpo one's a penalty for me because I feel that the footage is still inconclusive when I look at where Virgil van Dijk's foot struck the foot of the player. I can't tell whether, they show all these tight angles and I don't think the tight angles are helpful. It's the one angle where you can see along that line and they never play it in slow-mo. They never play the moment where it strikes. And I think there is a bit of a problem still with VAR, I'll be honest. Now, I'm not saying we would have gone on to win the game or whatever, but 1 goal difference compared to 2 is much more achievable than what feels like quite a big gap late on in a game, kind of with half an hour left, right? And that can be quite deflating for a team that I think are quite mentally malleable, should we say, right now. So I'm still a little questionable on that. I still think the Gakpo one was a penalty because I think they hit his left leg into his right leg, impeded his stride, and you don't have to kick the lower part of the leg. It was the upper part of the leg that met. It's very clear to me, and from the front, Hendo standing in front of that leg. From the back, it seems very clear that that is a masked movement. You cannot see kind of this part of the leg. So that's very frustrating, of course, as well, because I think if that's a penalty, I think Salah buries that, and away we go, right? And that is frustrating, because then they went down the other end, they got their opportunity, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, make excuses all you want. Let's get on to this. Excuse making or explanations. What's the difference between an excuse and an explanation? I'll define it for me. Let me know in the comments below. For me, an excuse is saying, this happened, therefore it's forgivable that the rest happened. Okay. I don't think that there are many excuses in football where one happens, therefore it's forgivable and explainable and understandable and whatever you want to call it, to the point where you go, okay, well, we'll just move on. I think in looking to try to explain this Liverpool team, we should lay that bare. I've seen other people calling the backline idiots, all these kind of things, and I'm very vocal about my dislike of the way that Kirkez plays right now. But personally, I think that it's very explainable why there are problems. And the system, for one, is me. We are currently in a halfway house between a 3-5-2 and a 4-3-3 or a 4-4-2. And yes, in possession, there's one shape, out of possession, there's another. But what I'm talking about here is the overall acknowledgeable shape that if you were to lay them out on the field, you would say, right, that person fits there, that person fits there, that person's predominantly a striker, they're going to do the pressing, that person's predominantly a midfielder, they're going to do that. We've got the wing backs and we've got 3 centre backs, one of which would play out. And that to me feels pretty straightforward. That from pairing up, and maybe it feels more straightforward and kind of obvious to me because of conversations I've had with other people who've spoken to people inside the club, people who've spoken about the ambitions of where the club want to go and all those kind of things, and what they've heard from very high up people at the club about wanting to change the shape of the team. And then we look at the goalkeeper, and the goalkeeper is almost a whole other conversation. So far, I'm unconvinced by Mamardashvili, and I'm just going to put it that simply. Maybe because we're currently sitting on the other best goalkeeper in the world. Mamardashvili, for me, is making, for the camera saves, those saves that he made last night, the ball were very reachable, at least a couple of times. I think one of those, Alisson probably picks it out the air with his hands. And I'm just not a for the camera saves type of guy. It's probably why I'm not a Donnarumma guy, actually. I'm just not one of those people, right? I prefer a goalkeeper where I think, I look at him and I think you could build a house with those hands. Not, you could do jazz hands. Not that jazz hands are a bad thing. I'm sure I'm much more capable of jazz hands than the house. But that's not the point. I'm not trying to be Liverpool's goalkeeper. Just saying. So, with that, I therefore understand why the players don't look together in certain parts. Because I think a lot of them are low on confidence. I think a lot of them are low on the confidence on the system that they're playing because they know they're stuck in this halfway house. And I would much rather see one player sacrifice, so Salah playing in a striker position, than multiple players sacrificing in order to accommodate the fact we don't have Isak in the team right now, or accommodate the fact that we don't have Gravenberch or whatever in the team. Even though I still think that actually I quite like that midfield too of these Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones. Szoboszlai for me was fantastic last night, and I could see his effort. And I love his partnership he's getting there with Wirtz. I love what he does for Wirtz, the kind of extra work he does, the self-sacrifice, all those things. I think that's really admirable and commendable, and I really love Szoboszlai as a player. I think he's my favourite Liverpool player right now. He's doing the number 8 justice, is what I would say. But I also think in all that effort, he is slightly making up for other people's lack of positioning or lack of whatever. Flooring Wirtz to me is a whole other video, so I will do that another time, put it that way. But what I'm going to say is, I think there is elements of luck. I think there's elements of fortune. Overall, for me, I understand, I think Slot will be given time, and I think he should be given time, mainly because I think we're caught in a halfway house. And I think once we commit to this new system, I think we'll be much, much improved. I'm not quite sure why we aren't still committing to this system. Sorry, I've got Statman Dave messaging me, and he says, this is getting bad. Double zero agents running wild, not defending long throws, Virgil looking done. It's a tricky one to approach a Manchester United fan like this. Don't approach them when a Manchester United fan is feeling punchy. It's no good. Anyway, that's what I get all day from multiple different people. I've been invited on so many podcasts since Liverpool started losing. You'd think that my career had taken off. This isn't my career. I'm going to finish on this. There is a lot of performativity in online spaces. Performativity being you doing something with the expectation of the impact it will have on the other people, and therefore being able to an extent, control the situation. What I mean by that is, I witness it in my Liverpool groups, I witness it on a lot of YouTube videos, I witness it on Twitter, people trying to minimize the impact of what other people are saying by flogging themselves and our own team and making it seem worse than it actually is. So when other people then choose to criticize, we go, well, we know that this is bad. We're saying things as a fan base currently in anticipation of other people's criticism of our side, rather than having realistic criticism of the team and staying within the bounds of relaxing about this, or if you don't want to relax, then at least just remain calm about it. I see people going, these guys are awful, they're rubbish, they're not good enough. Shut up. Just shut up. It's such a stupid thing to say that professional footballers are finished or they don't understand the game or any of these things. Andy Robertson and Virgil van Dijk and Arne Slot all broke down that the system was not enacted in the way that it needed to be against Brentford, right? Cool. That's a good acknowledgement. I think it's worth then taking that and learning from that rather than going, this guy's an idiot, this guy's an idiot, this guy's an idiot, right? Because they're clearly not idiots, right? Anyway, it is what it is. The big thing for me is that I'm not going to be performative here on this channel. I'm not going to say and flog ourselves. I will say, yeah, I thought Brentford deserved to win the game, but I'm not going to say Brentford by a country mile deserved to win this. We didn't deserve it. Because there's one thing I really find difficult in football, and it's something which has dogged the Liverpool fans, but in particular kind of working class fans for quite some time. And it's something that you tend to find the upper class or the middle class teams, the London clubs, all those kind of things will perpetuate in football. And it is worthiness to win a title. And talking about being worthy of a title. Now, it's a very English idea to be worthy of something. It's this idea, and it's why we flog ourselves. It's why we will listen to the upper classes, and it's why we'll give all these politicians, everyone else, space to say things about us that would never get said in polite society anywhere else. It's why we let people talk rubbish about us. And it is such an English idea to be worthy of a title in England or anywhere else in the world. We do it with the England team all the time. Not that I do it particularly with the England team, but there are plenty of people. This side aren't good enough, they're not playing well enough, therefore they shouldn't win. Football is broadly reflective of society, fine. But society is not all about your worth, but if we make it about your worth, then it will end up reflecting that. Even if it isn't actually about that. The worthy team does not always win the football match, all right? You don't know what effort's gone in during the week before that. And saying that a side is worthy of a Premier League title, are these guys worthy? Are they the worst ever Premier League champions? Is only a system by which you can use to flog your own people or your own ideas. And us as fans stepping out and saying, we weren't worthy of winning the game. I get that in the moment, but I guess the frustration for me is when people make it all about that. And I've seen a lot of fan channels doing that. I've seen a lot of Twitter channels. I've seen a lot of journalists just talking about whether teams deserve to win the game. Well, answer me this. Can we 100% conclusively say that the penalty was inside the penalty area or not? No, we can't. Can we say whether Cody Gakpo's leg was in or outside the penalty area, was being impeded or not? No, we can't. So are we worthy, therefore, or less worthy or more worthy? Because we were hard done by. But are Brentford then less worthy because Brentford got a very fortunate penalty that broadly you wouldn't see elsewhere in football? You probably wouldn't see it. There are plenty of other times where people haven't gone back and checked their VAR decision, and we've been on the receiving end of that. Are we more worthy because we went through those moments? Just because this team doesn't play particularly well doesn't mean that it's all about let's flog ourselves and flog this team. That is not the only way of supporting them. And it's not about throwing people under the bus or whatever. It is not to do with any of that, at least not from my perspective. So all these people doing the old, I texted it to a friend this morning. I just want to do the exact wording that I sent to a friend of mine. I said, and this whole we must suffer because we didn't play well is such a martyr approach. Yes, we did not play well, but the worthy doesn't always win the game. And so I'm so done with that. We're not martyrs, guys. We especially aren't martyrs in this situation. So stop with this rubbish about being, this team aren't good enough. This is a transitional season. This is clearly a time of change for Liverpool as a club. Don't listen to people who can cherry pick stats and can... Sky Sports put out something this morning. They were like, it's the longest run since blah, blah, blah. 2021. Klopp was an extremely worthy manager. Klopp was a manager that went on to do great things and challenged for a lot of things in that period and win things in that period. Don't tell me that suddenly we turn our back on our overall approach as Liverpool Football Club because of some media approach and some need to flog ourselves that comes, by the way, from a global approach, because we do not have a global fan identity which matches that of what Liverpool Football Club is or should be, because we import these dumb ideas from other places, latch onto them, and then go, yeah, that's our approach to this now. We import them from London, Manchester, Newcastle, and around the world where people talk about worthiness, and the only reason they talk about worthiness, nothing to do with their culture, to do with what they think British culture is, about being worthy and all this, because they hear our British people, our British pundits, people who it's not just about being just British, by the way, you can just have grown up in Britain, saying things about being worthy of a title. It's the same rubbish Real Madrid come out with, that they're worthy of it somehow more than anyone else, because we were the anointed side. Give up this rubbish. First of all, it doesn't reflect anything about the ethos of the football club that I grew to love. It's, you can flog yourself all day long, but it's complete rubbish to put all this stuff out there. So miss me with all that if you're into that vibe of football, because it just isn't the way that I see football in any way. And yes, you will hear me say, I don't think we deserve to win the game. That's not the same as being worthy of all this or saying you're not worthy to win a title or whatever. Whilst we sit within 2 or 3 games of Arsenal and everyone else, no, I'm not going to give away the title. No, I'm not going to say that we, don't deserve whatever. We're not even 10 games into the season yet. We'll be 10 games into the season by the end of next week. That is a quarter of the season. This is roughly a quarter of the season gone. We're not actually over a quarter of the season gone yet. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't make conclusions before they are made, and certainly don't be making judgments on Slot or this system, which is in a halfway house, before it is done. I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll be doing a video probably tomorrow where we're going through the rest of the comments, because I thought you gave some incredible comments on yesterday's video about the perspective and the way that people agreed or disagreed. I really enjoyed the just the overall discourse. I can pick a couple of them here. Lars, great video as always. Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that, Will. Their penalty isn't a penalty. Fair enough. Point number 1. Slot needs to own this. That's what I want to finish on. Arne Slot, I think at the moment he's giving the media too much kind of leeway or whatever with the comments he makes. It's extremely Dutch meets extremely British. He's very Dutch, so he will just say what he thinks are literal things, and the British people take it and go, oh, there's an undertone there. It's more of this Britishness. It's more of this British media. It's more of this coverage. It's more of what we think we are, where we're not. And he will trust them with those words. Those words then get twisted. We see comments, and when he says something like, we haven't found a solution yet, they go, he doesn't have a solution? What? This is unbelievable that Slot doesn't think he has it. Of course he has a solution. Of course he has solves to all of these systems. But what he also needs to do is instill a sense of ownership and a sense of belonging and a sense of togetherness within this Liverpool side, which is, I'm sure, what they're trying to instill, which is why they have the players meeting, all those kind of things. But Slot then also needs to do that. And I think publicly right now, there is a bit of a disconnect between where Slot is kind of saying things and where the Liverpool fans are. And that's why some people are talking about a lack of connection. I will remind you guys about Jurgen Klopp. I'll remind you guys about a number of different people who had a great connection with us, but also missed the mark sometimes, guys. Klopp missed the mark for me on Trent Alexander-Arnold. Klopp missed the mark when he would moan about things post-game. For me, I got it, and I understand why he moans. I didn't think that was what we needed from our manager at that point, though I understand his venting, and I'm not telling us his job, you get my point. So did Rafa. So have so many other people's. I think Kenny Dalglish missed the mark when we wore those t-shirts with Luis Suarez and all those other guys. So I think we've missed the mark a lot in our history, but I think most football clubs miss the mark. And I think it's about coming together after those things and not, again, flogging yourselves or flogging your manager or going to extremes to dampen what everyone else is saying and sort of go, well, we're already doing the martyr thing, so you guys don't need to. I don't care what Arsenal fans say on Twitter. I don't care what Manchester United fans have to say online. I care about our reaction and I care about how it then impacts our approach to games, but I don't care about the rest of that stuff. Broadly. I care if it impacts the club. I don't care to take it and go, oh yeah, there. We'll go really smart, well thought out opinion there. So yeah, a lot to unpack there. Maybe a little too much for one video, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will chat to you in the Discord, possibly in a Patreon, but also possibly in the membership if you are down there. Join me on any of those, and I'll chat to you in a while. Much love. Bye-bye.